audio. Just check that and hopefully that works okay for you. Any problems though, do just drop us a question and our tech guru Jen in the background will pick it up and make sure you're up and running. And equally, please do engage with the content today. Question box is there for you. We'd love your thoughts, your comments and questions for Duncan, which we'll pose to him at the end. So back to the agenda. I'm really delighted to welcome Duncan Bennett. Is the Managing Director from Not Sports, who has been with us since 2002. And Duncan, are you hearing me okay? Everything's working?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I don't know if you can see me on my webcam or not, but yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think we can, but
okay.
We've got a deck, hopefully, so we can talk through the slides. And I'm going to hand over to you. So everyone, there we go, brilliant. They're just coming up. Everyone, enjoy the session. As we've said before, this is being recorded, so we'll share with you shortly afterwards. Thanks, Duncan.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Duncan Bennett and I'm Managing Director at Not Sport. We are providers of artificial grass, surfaced sport play and cricket facilities. And the presentation we'll run through today will hopefully explain how many schools and academies and trusts are using sports facilities to generate income outside of traditional sort of streams to supplement their budgets in other areas of their organisation. So if we can just click through to the first slide, we'll get cracking. And as Beth said, if you want to offer any questions or answers, any questions, I'll do my best to answer them at the end of the session. If you can, yeah, that's it, yeah. Lovely. So just a little bit of background to start with about Not Sports. We are, as I say, artificial suppliers or suppliers of artificial turf for sport, play and leisure facilities. We've been around since 1984. And what we offer is support to academies, trusts, sports clubs, all types of different customers who are looking to develop artificial grass surfaced sport, play and cricket facilities. We aren't a contractor and we aren't a manufacturer. So what we do is sit in the middle of those two areas and offer the best possible advice to customers looking to develop that type of project. And in the 35 years we've been around, we've become well recognised in our industry, and we are partners to the FIH, which is the International Hockey Federation. We offer a range of ECB Code of Practice approved cricket facilities, and we're also the official partners to England Hockey. And crucially, I suppose, for the purposes of this presentation, we're also the only company that can offer a proven and valid funding solution for this type of project into the education marketplace. And the second part of the presentation will go into detail around that. You can just click to the next slide. Lovely, thank you. And these next few slides, just excuse the trumpet, but these are the ones that the accreditations we've built, which hopefully give you reassurance and confidence that we are a reputable and credible company if you chose to work with us or speak to us following the presentation. So hockey is a key area for us, and we have partnerships with Hockey Wales, England Hockey, and we're also the partner for Hockey Fest, which is the national club event for hockey clubs in England and Wales. And then the next slide will show our badge for cricket, and we'll just whiz through this next slide as well. Thank you. Because one of the things that people aren't always aware of is that we supply a playground surfacing system that's used throughout the UK by local authorities, schools, clubs, etc. But also we export it out to the likes of Spain, Germany, and this photo is from a dinosaur-themed park in America, in Utah, and it's quite an impressive place. They've got a volcano that erupts on the hour, a train that goes around it. Playgrounds are different in America to what we have by and large, but yeah, so we also offer playground solutions as well, and we're a member of SAPCA, which is our industry body. The next slide. But the purpose of today's presentation is really to focus on the sports side, because that is the area where we provide solutions that can generate income through external lettings. So common question we get asked is, why would you invest in a sports facility? And the next set of slides will go into a little bit of detail around that. Yeah. And I thought this quote was quite interesting, actually. I was at a site, an academy in the north of England, northwest, and the academy manager, whilst we were looking at the area that had been identified as being developed into an artificial turf area, I was asking her why the academy was looking at this type of project, and she simply replied with that statement: there is no other investment or project that we can make in an academy that can generate a surplus income of, well, in their case, that sort of £40,000 figure. And we'll go into some of the detail around what these sorts of facilities can make. But yeah, there is, as far as we're aware, very few other options that can generate significant sums of money for an academy or a trust or a school that can be reinvested into different areas of the site. So this is quite a powerful message, and something that I thought was useful. So yeah, the next slides we will go through. We'll go into this a little bit more. So outside of just generating income, there's also various benefits to developing an artificial turf sports facility. Crucially, it attracts new visitors and customers. So if you are introducing new facilities or upgraded facilities, then hopefully you'll get new people coming into the site. They'll be able to see the infrastructure that you've got there, and many will be parents, because there'll be adults playing five-side football or hockey or rugby or whatever it may be, which can help with your PR and marketing. If you're developing an artificial grass sports facility, then very often it also frees up sports areas within the site from overuse. So we often hear that a sports hall is completely booked out for five-side football if there's nowhere outside to play, or that the grass fields are getting hammered because there's no artificial grass surface to play on. So this frees up other areas. What we never find is that it frees up a sports hall that's then not fully booked back up for the sports it was intended for: badminton, netball, etc. So it doesn't duplicate use, it creates additional use and frees up all those other areas from perhaps activities that really they're not really as designed for as artificial grass would be. Our work also includes anything that creates the infrastructure to support that particular project. So it can include car parking, access arrangements, additional facilities like long jump pits, and of course a lot of the projects that we do include lighting, sports equipment, and perimeter fencing. So our service encompasses everything you're going to need to convert what might be a greenfield site at the moment to a fully comprehensive, functioning, accessible sports facility. And artificial turf obviously provides a year-round alternative to traditional turf. It requires a lot less maintenance, and the costs, the IOG as they used to be called, Institute of Groundsmen, have got quite a bit of detail about the savings compared to natural turf, which is sometimes a key point for the site staff. A facility that is available all year round is also beneficial to the academy itself, because it's going to be available for sport and PE far more frequently than natural turf. And crucially, what we do is work with schools to develop bespoke designs. And again, we'll come back to this in a minute, but if you've got a vision and a strategic need within your site for a sport or a range of sports, our job as your project managers, designers, is to design it to suit that requirement. So each and every scheme we do is bespoke for the customer that we work with. And with fast track funding, we can spread the cost of the project for a period of up to 7 years, and the income from the lettings, assuming that we can get lighting through planning and things like that, the income from lettings will contribute or very often cover the cost of the repayments. So the facility pays for itself in the funding period, that period of up to 7 years, after which the facility becomes the property or the asset of the academy or the trust, and the income generation is yours to do with what you will. But in that funding period, we'll work with you to create a business case to say, right, the costs are X, the funding projections are Y per year, and the income projections for this sort of facility in your area would be Z. And we can quickly, from initial feasibility reports, develop that and identify whether it's a coherent, viable business case. Another important factor to support your idea is that we work at risk, so we don't charge for our services up front. The area that we supply is the surface itself when the project happens. So unless a project happens and unless you commit to working with Not Sport, we don't make our return. So we work at risk to try and give you the best information possible, so you can make an informed decision as to whether the project is viable on your specific site. And the crucial thing about fast track funding is that we only need a week, maybe 2 weeks, to get a decision on whether the funding is going to be viable. And at the moment, we haven't found an academy or a trust or a school that hasn't been able to get the funding that they require. So I'm sure there is somewhere out there that we'll struggle to get the funding approval on, to get auditor approval. But at the moment, we've got 40 plus schools that have completed the projects using the fast track funding model. You can click to the next slide. Thank you. And so all this is great. We can develop a project, we can fit it onto your site, we can meet your requirements as an academy, we can engage with stakeholders outside of the academy or trust, such as sports clubs that would use it. But how do you create that business case into something that you can present to trustees or governors or senior management teams? So we help you do that. We will work with you to identify local, what we would call anchor tenants. So if it was a hockey pitch, our relationship with England Hockey is a great example of how we can link directly to a governing body and find out which clubs in your area are looking for training facilities or practice facilities or even match facilities. And that may be a trigger to conversations that will result in them being the anchor tenant that will guarantee a level of income every week for 40 plus weeks a year, so that you know you've got a solid income from a single organisation year in, year out for the funding period. So we'll help you do that with our governing body contacts, not just in hockey, but in football and rugby as well, and work with your sports staff that invariably know the range of local teams and clubs in your area where the kids already play. We'll also help you identify what savings you can make by having your own facility on site instead of potentially having to use buses and going out to different sites in your local area to access their facilities. And sometimes this can add up, as it says on the bottom point, to as much as 40k a year with one trust. So that saving can go straight into the business case to say, well, rather than us spending £40,000 accessing other sites, we can use that money because we're not going to spend it anymore to underpin the business case for our facility that we're looking to build. Obviously, and again, I'm not the expert on academy and funding on headcounts and stuff, but we are aware that academies want capacity, and so having state-of-the-art, high-quality sports facilities is attractive to parents when they look at the range of options available to them, and that can increase the quantity and headcount for the students in the academy. We see that a lot. Schools and academies that haven't had sports facilities and do, suddenly the pupil numbers sort of build, admittedly as part of a wider strategic aim and drive, but our facility and our work will help us in association with that wider drive. What we also do is work with the schools teams, senior management teams. If there is a fundraising sort of arm or manager, then working with them to put PR into local press to promote the investment that you're looking to make. That can also help drive funding as well. And of course, a facility like this, a sports facility, can increase the commercial opportunities outside of just a hockey club using it. There's summer camps, there's links to professional clubs and their outreach programs. So St Peter's High School in Gloucester, where we did a hockey pitch resurface and a half-sized new build 3G, they managed to establish strong links with West Bromwich Albion's outreach program in Gloucestershire, and they use it, and there's a huge brand association the schools managed to secure as a result of that. So that increases the commercial opportunities just outside of a five-a-side league on a Monday or a Friday. And we also accept that whilst St Peter's had a full-size pitch as part of their scheme, we're working with a number of academies, Windsor Academy Trust, for example, in the West Midlands, who are currently doing a upgrade of existing tarmac courts. So it's not a full-size facility, but we can manipulate the existing footprint to convert it to a state-of-the-art 3G sports facility in their case, to generate a really viable, valuable asset for the school and the trust that can also generate income possibilities. So this doesn't have to be a full-size pitch. We're doing smaller facilities, and we can assess your existing assets and facilities as part of our initial feasibility report if it isn't a full-size pitch you're looking for, or even if it is. And the other bit that we can do to support the business case is also link with partners like School Letting Solutions, who can offer turnkey solutions to guarantee a level of income from external letting. So if you don't have any facility management on site, organisations like School Letting Solutions work with a lot of academies and trusts to oversee that and take the responsibility of opening the gates, turning on the lights, turning off the lights, and getting the bookings in. So we can introduce that into the mix as well. So our role is to help you identify what's possible on your site, identify the capital costs and the funded projections set against them for the cost of the scheme, and also help you develop the business case to underpin any strategic investment you're looking to make. You can click on to the next slide. All that really means that we also need to develop an idea for you as to what revenue these facilities can develop. And I'm going to sit squarely on the fence talking to customers from around the UK. It really depends where you are in the country, what type of facility you're looking to do, and the associated infrastructure with the facility that you've either got or you're looking to do. So it's very difficult to say a hockey pitch will generate X on every site around England. It does depend where you are in the country. But what we'll do initially is do some fairly desk-based, admittedly, work to propose some reasonably accurate projections. They're usually conservative, if I'm honest. And then if there is a sort of acceptance of the viable scheme, we'll obviously develop that into a far more scientific and detailed analysis of the income projections. But the pitches that we've done are generating over £100,000 of income per year, even after the running costs are allowed for. Equally, the smaller facilities that are generating £20,000, £30,000 a year, but that is sufficient to underpin the investment of a smaller facility. So everything can be identified early, and you can make an informed choice as an academy or trust to your specific site as to whether it's viable on your particular location. And our responsibility is to make sure we don't underplay the capital costs and therefore the funding. Equally, we don't overplay the amount that you can generate in your particular area, because we don't want the business case to fail. If anything, we actually, as I say, use conservative income projections to try and say, right, the minimum expectation is X, and how does that look? Hopefully it looks okay, and that's fine. And anything you do over and above the income is a bonus. But it is critical to establish the demand in the area. And again, working with governing bodies and our partners, we can do that. Typically, a hockey club or a football club looking to use the facility in the evenings through the week will want it for training. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are very popular days. Mondays and Fridays less so, but that's where five-a-side football or small-sided games or even junior clubs sort of fill the gaps. And then in the summer, you don't want to just see the facility used from dawn through the evenings from sort of October to March, when daylight doesn't allow use unless it's floodlit. You also want to use it in the months through the summer. So we'll also help you identify non-traditional sports like American football, for example, kids clubs, summer camps, etc. So you can get a full year-round master booking sheet developed, so you know what realistically you can generate throughout 12 months. And as it says there, the rental prices vary. So in Leicester city centre, where we're based, well, near where we're based, we're not under lockdown, but near where we're based, the schools that are charging as much as £150 an hour for a full-size 3G, a hockey pitch at £80 an hour, and then in other areas, a 3G would be £80 an hour and a hockey pitch would be 50. So it really does vary. But pitches are typically split into thirds or quarters, and that can also be a way to generate more than just a full pitch letting per hour. And again, we can explain that to you individually if you chose to meet with us on your site to discuss your scheme. And as it says there, we'll work with you to identify the local demand, linking into the governing bodies and to strategic plans within a local authority, so the whole thing becomes coherent and not just a a facility that stands alone in perfect isolation on an academy site with no community links and wider strategic links to playing pitch strategies and things like that. You can click on to the next slide. So once we've done that, the next question is usually how does fast track funding work? And if we click on to the next slide, then we'll go into that detail. So big numbers, big sort of headline figures. We've been doing fast track funding since 2012. The first project actually went ahead in 2013, which is now into its final year. So it was a 7-year funding period ending in 2020. So we've got the first site just this summer in about a month's time, coming to the end of its funding agreement. So we've gone through a full cycle. So in 8 years, we've done, I think it's more than 42. We've got, I think, 45 in total on site, with 3 more starting in the next, last week and this week. On average, we fund facilities across that to £375-ish thousand, with a total facility value of over 15 million. So this is a proven delivery mechanism for schools and academy and in education sector generally, and it's a great way for schools and academies to spread the cost of a £500,000 project over a period of up to 7 years. You can click on to the next slide. And it is indeed that it's designed to offer you an alternative to what is a really, really competitive traditional grant funded route. So the days where big lottery funded fund £500,000 hockey pitches, in single pot have gone. Sport England, by the stated sort of strategic position, are the funders of last resort. So getting big chunks of grants is very difficult. There are still ways, and we can talk with you about that individually, but it is a very, very competitive and oversubscribed grant funded route. I think Sport England told us before COVID, at least, they were getting in excess of about 60 applications for their grants per week. So you have to have a really standout application to get that sort of funding. And even then, their average fund is £50,000. Their average grant, I should say, is £50,000, which is great, and it's not insubstantial, but it doesn't get you a £500,000 project over the line very rarely. So fast track funding there, it's designed to be flexible, and as I say, it's been worked across over 40 projects since 2013, and the income generation from these sorts of facilities where they're floodlit is such that it can underpin the repayments, and we work with you, and it can be used for new build and refurbishment projects. So it doesn't have to be a new build, it can be a refurbishment project or a resurface project of an existing facility, and this is all on every scheme has to pass auditor approval for you as an academy or a trust. So it's all in line with the SFA requirements. Click on to the next slide. And I've sort of gone through this, but perhaps some bits just to pick out. In 2013, to get the first project at Whitefield School through, which is the one I mentioned is due to finish its funding cycle this summer, we had to get Secretary of State approval. So we had to go right to that level initially. All that's been done. So as I say, that Whitefields were the first sort of project that had to go through that pain, if you want to call it that, and to get that level of approval. All that's in place, and it's far more straightforward now. And then last year we did 9 projects, with the biggest project we've ever done at Herts and Essex School in Bishop Stopford, which was a total value of £775,000, because their project included tarmac courts, car parks, and things like that. So we click on to the next slide. And the next one again, so the typical schools we work with, it's been a range. These are names that we've worked with. There's more to add to this now, as I say, but there's a range of academies, Catholic schools associated with dioceses, traditional schools, a couple of independent schools as well. So this is, proven across a different range of educational organisations, but mainly academies and trusts. And if you click the button again, you'll see a few names grey out, because what happened was, on those projects, the business case was so strong that at the end of the scheme they actually decided to fund it themselves. So we developed everything on a fast track funding model, but then the school decided to pay for it with capital reserves, or with different pots of money they had access to, rather than using the funding mechanism in full. So we work at risk. We don't make any more money out of the project going through fast track funding. Is merely there as a mechanism for you to use if you need it. If you don't need it, then the business case that's developed in association with it can often really underpin a wider decision on using capital reserves. And click on to the next slide. And this is, hopefully you can hear it. I don't know if you can or not.
My name is Sarah Collins. I am the Director of Sport for the Griffin Schools Trust. Stantonbury International School is one of 13 schools that the Griffin Schools Trust owns, and I have the responsibility of all things sport related across all of the schools. Stantonbury International School has a massive range of facilities. One thing we'd never want to do is lose these facilities. We want to make sure that all of the children who come to Stantonbury campus have access to high quality facilities. Alongside that is obviously the desire to help the community with, well, particularly football, but also any other sport that we can play in the surface, such as lacrosse. Sports are such a massive part of both schools and communities that the pitch will be invaluable in not only helping us to attract more users to the pitch, also increasing activity in the local area, but also helping our children in the schools achieve excellence, helping them to aspire to be something within a sports environment. It's a good way of ensuring that, particularly for sport, but it's a good way of ensuring that the sports team and the sports departments have enough resource to continue to deliver high quality sport. Sport clearly and sport isn't always the most high priority of the subjects that we deliver. It is for me, and obviously as a director of sport, I want to drive sports participation, I want to drive sports excellence. So actually the more that we can do through community use, the more that we're going to be able to sustain the school department. But sport is so fundamental to not only health, but also for a release for some of the students. They can play sport to help them with their education. They can play sport to help them with their exams. So we need to make sure that where possible we do retain good high quality facilities. They will always respond to you if you have questions. They've gone over and above what we felt they needed to do in order to get this pitch in, and from the conversations we've had this morning, we'll continue to do that whilst we make sure that we have the abilities to maintain the facility. So absolutely. The whole process has been absolutely seamless from the first contact through to now when we've received the pitch. They're regularly in touch. It's easy, very, very helpful. All the contacts are there that we needed to do, whether it be the funding or the contractors. It's taken, I can't say anything more than sort of 3 to 4 months from the initial contact through to completion. It's been fabulous.
Lovely. If we can click on the next slide. So just you heard there how quickly these things can turn around. We got the inquiry there in December last year. You can click on the next slide as well. And by March this year, it was complete. So these projects can turn around very quickly. And the reason there was that the pitch they had originally was condemned. It was an issue for the school. They couldn't use it as they wanted to. So it was in everybody's interest to turn it round, but they didn't have any capital funds available. Hence, fast track funding sort of providing the total funding solution. But as it says there, second point, it doesn't have to fund the entire project. If you've got a level of contribution to make, then fast track funding can top up the final £20,000 if you wanted it to, or it can cover the whole of the project cost as it did at Stantonbury and many other projects. And the way we work, as we'll go through now, is that we work entirely at risk to try and give you that information to make some informed decisions as to whether the project's viable, whether it can generate that additional income that's so critical to many schools and trusts, and arguably will be even more critical moving forward. And if so, then we continue to do that. We will act as your project managers to guide you through procurement, running a tender project process, getting your planning permission if it's required, etc., etc. So, yeah, our role is to give you initially the information that you can use to make informed decisions, and then run you through a full project service to get you from an idea where you've got a scheme in mind to completion. And as Sarah said, beyond, we're still in touch, and we make sure that those facilities that we complete are in good working order, being maintained correctly, etc. And everything we do is designed to be bespoke and flexible. So we'll develop the design to suit your site and your specific requirements, as will the funding be set up to suit you. So you can pay monthly, quarterly, annually, or whatever it may be. You can click on the next slide. And our service is summed up in those 4 areas. I'm going to whiz through this next section because of time. But basically, Stantonbury is a good example. We got an inquiry, we went out, we did an initial feasibility report that established the verificacy of the project. We then put that into a technical specification and tender package against which the contractors worked. We didn't need planning permission because it was existing with lights, but that was assessed as part of the project. And then once the contractor has been awarded the contract, we then become project managers to make sure that the contractor is building with the required materials to the required standards using the accepted methodology for these types of projects. So you've got quality control through the project, contract administration, health and safety oversight. So it's a complete turnkey package through the design, development, delivery, and post-construction support for these pitches tend to last 10, 12 years on average. And click on the next slide. And we work in partnership with organisations, obviously like Oaks, School Letting Solutions, and our funding partners are Unilink, who are specialist lease providers for the education sector. And all this has to be done via an operating lease, because that's the only way that the funding can be put into place. So everything is compliant to the operating lease tests. That element is looked after by funding specialists, a company called Unilink, as I say, who have done these 40-odd projects with us. You can click on the next slide again. So just a sort of a slide through, we can click through fairly quickly. We sit at the sort of top of the tree, if you like, receiving inquiries. If it's from you as an academy or a school, we then pull together all the project stakeholders to make sure that any design that's agreed is done so with everybody involved. There's no point in building a football pitch if the local demand is for a hockey pitch and vice versa. So we'll pull all that information together to make sure any agreement to proceed is going to suit everybody. Obviously key for the school and the trust, but also the local area. So you know that if it was built, people are going to access it and use it, and we'll refine that, as I say, as the project develops. Click again. That design forms a specification, and if we click down, that then leads us to formulate that into a fully compliant tendering process where contractors, all independent of ourselves but proven to deliver sports pitches such as this, all tender on a competitive basis back to you as the customer for the right to construct and deliver the project, whatever scope, shape that is. And that specification encompasses everything from groundworks to drainage to fencing to lighting to access paths to car parking if it's needed, everything that is necessary to make that project work on your particular site. So click down again. The contracting partners, as I say, return the tenders to yourself. That is the first point where the firm costs are established, because they're fixed tender returns on the agreed design, and that then sets the level of fast track funding in combination with existing budgets or as a standalone funding solution. We then run the contract with the contractor building, overseeing everything, as I've already gone through, to completion and after, with maintenance and support on after sales as well. So this is a long gestation. On average, a new build project we'll work on for maybe 18 months, 2 years. A resurface typically is 12 months, but Stantonbury is an example of where that was expedited to ensure the school had access to external sports facilities that were otherwise closed to them because of health and safety issues. So we can speed up, but on average, we're developing long-term relationships with individual schools or trusts just through the nature of how long these projects take. And click through to the next slide. We'll finish with some projections of figures. So nothing to hide, a full-sized new build artificial turf pitch is going to cost plus or minus 5% of £550,000. If your site is in the middle of a swamp or on the side of a cliff, ignore that figure, it's going to be a bit more expensive. But on average, they're coming out at around that price even now. So that would be for a fully compliant, very high quality hockey pitch or a FIFA quality compliant 3G pitch. And then what we can't do is include revenue costs in the funding. So maintenance would be put in place separately. But yeah, that's typically £500 a visit. And for a hockey pitch, you'd be looking at 4 to 6 visits. For a 3G football pitch, you probably need 8, maybe 10 visits a year, but it gives you a rough idea. And then we offer support through the construction, as I say, which is all part of our service, so they're at no cost. And that figure, £550,000, includes all our services through the return on the supply of the synthetic grass. So if you take £550,000 and click on the next slide, then we'll show you some tables that are taken directly from reports. So £550,000 spread over 5 years with different level of deposits produce funding repayment payments per year of, if it's 100% funded, £112,000, £113,000, diminishing down to £61,000 if there was a large deposit. If you spread it over 7 years, then your repayments are less because you're spreading it over a longer period of time. Just simple sort of comparison would be to sort of the way mortgage payments work. If you spread your mortgage over a long period, the annual payments come down or the monthly payments come down, but obviously you're spreading it across a longer period. And the final payment on a year 6 at the end of a 5-year period, or year 8 on the end of a 7-year period, is the amount left unpaid through the operating lease. So an operating lease, by definition, can't cover the entire project cost. We have to leave a residual amount left unpaid, as it's called, which becomes the final 8th payment or 6th payment if it's a 5-year period. And at that point, the ownership transfers back to the school, albeit you have different options than just paying that out. And we can cover that individually with you or in the Q&A to follow. If you click through to the next slide, we'll give you an indication of what a resurface would cost. So if you've got an existing pitch, typical resurface would cost £200,000 to £210,000. We'll use 210 here. Maintenance isn't different. Obviously, you're maintaining the surface, whether it's new or a resurface. If you click through to the next slide, some of you may well be ahead of me. If you spread £210,000 over 5 years, you get circa £43,000 a year with no contribution or deposit, as it's called there. And over 7 years, you're at 32. So a typical full-size pitch very rarely generates less than £60,000 a year. So your resurface project almost certainly would fit into a really robust business case with surplus income. A full-size pitch needs more work, it's more expensive, so not every project we go and see does have a income generation sufficient to cover the entire project cost. And again, that might mean the scheme isn't viable, or it may be that you say, well, for £15,000 per year shortfall, that's a really good deal for our trust to get a new build pitch that would otherwise cost us £500,000 plus. So, and there's no right or wrong with all that. That's for conversations and discussions you have. So click down to the next slide. We're reaching the end, and indeed we have. So the first step, really, because we work on an individual basis, developing bespoke designs, is to speak to us. We can have an initial conversation over the phone or Zoom or Teams, as we do now, of course, but ultimately come out, do a full feasibility report, so you get a really hefty document that will cover everything you need to go through. Invariably, it will create more questions than answers initially, particularly for a new build, but it's a really comprehensive document that you can start to make some decisions against. And if it is demonstrating a viable scheme, hopefully we're a company that you can engage with to see that through the next stages. But it is working at risk, so that document is yours, and you can use that to explore other avenues if you'd like. But more and more people are looking at fast track funding and working with Not Sport because of the total package and service we offer. So please speak to us. I'm happy to take Q&A now anyway, in this short period I think we've got left. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Duncan. That was really thorough. So much information, but really, really helpful. And we have had a couple of questions, they're linked. So one of the audience members has asked, do you find that the multi-academy trust boards or school governors are perhaps sometimes a little bit hesitant to commit to this kind of agreement? And what sort of support do you offer to the schools who are trying to get them on side?
Very good question. The answer is yes. Ultimately, with a new build, so if you've got an existing facility, it's fairly known facts we're dealing with. You'll have an existing amount of income that you're generating from a facility. If you resurface it, you can probably increase the hourly rates because you're giving them a new service rather than something that's 10, 12 years old. But there's facts. There's bona fide proof in the ground that the income is X. If it's new build, we can do all the projections in the world, but at some point you're going to have to take a bit of a leap of faith because from somebody saying they're going to use it 4 hours a week on a consultation to actually you opening the gates and then turning up, there is a sort of a level of trust and as I say, leap of faith you need to make. So what we do is try and make sure that anchor tenants are signed up as part of the project before the build phase starts, which is often possible. And then secondly, what we'll also do on every scheme anyway is come to governors meetings, trustee meetings to do presentations specific on the project and answer Q&A that the governors all no doubt and trustees all will have on the specifics of the scheme that we've developed. So we do that. If that's evening, so be it. It's not a problem. We were at one in St Albans recently, and yeah, we got some good questions thrown at us. As some reassurance, that project looks like it's happening now. So I think we can cover a lot of the questions. And Unilink on the funding technicalities will also attend those meetings as well. So if there's questions about the way the funding works and all VAT implications and things like that, I am definitely not the man to answer that, but Unilink have people that will attend those meetings who can cover all those sorts of questions too.
Fab, and just one quick one. We've had a member of the audience to say that they've had a conversation perhaps before and there was some concern, some kind of uncertainty around cannot part pay. Relate to that at all, or?
Yeah, so without knowing the project specifically, I'm not sure the exact details. But the one thing that the slide, one of the slides highlighted, which I didn't touch on in fairness, just to get through, but happy to say now is we can't use fast track funding in conjunction with Exchequer funding, which is basically Sport England money, because the terms of the Sport England grant are such that the recipient has to own the asset. I think it's for 25 years. Well, through the nature of fast track funding, it's a lease. So somebody else, Santander, Societe Generale, who's paying for it, owns that asset, not the land, but the asset for the period of funding. So we've sat with Sport England, their lawyers, our lawyers, England Hockey were involved in a couple of those meetings. They like what we do, we like what they do, but we just can't overcome that legal wrangle, really. So, yeah, you can't use fast track funding in conjunction with Sport England grants, but you can use it with National Hockey Foundation. You can use it with Section 106 monies, grants that you can secure from local authorities. It's that Exchequer money that we can't dovetail with fast track.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you. Well, I'm conscious of time. That was really helpful, and audience, as Duncan said, he is available. We'll obviously be sharing his details, so do drop him a line, and hopefully you might even join us for virtual networking. We're going to take a really quick short pause and then we'll be moving on to the following section, which is starting at 11:15 with the girls at the schools phase. So thanks, Duncan. As said before, this webinar link will continue to stream, so it's just going to go into break mode where we'll mute ourselves.